Madam Chairman, I call up McConnell Amendment number 1. This relates to the Federal Election Commission. As all of us, I think, know, the FEC was created back in 1974 in the wake of Watergate. That was a period during which our Democratic colleagues had overwhelming majorities in the House and Senate. They could have crafted the FEC any way they chose to, but they realized that it ought to be evenly split between Republicans and Democrats. There was broad bipartisan understanding that the new panel needed to be beyond reproach. That's why it was built with an even-numbered membership, limits on commissioners' party affiliation, and requirements for supermajority support. Legitimacy would have to come from impartiality. All the way back in 1976, Democratic Senator Alan Cranston from California specifically warned that, quote, the FEC has such a potential for abuse in our democratic society that the president should not be given power over the commission. Much more recently, one of the FEC's most liberal commissioners reaffirmed that the bipartisan structure was established, quote, to ensure that there was not going to be a partisan effort to use investigations against one political party or another, end quote. And yet, in this sweeping legislation, which our Democratic friends keep characterizing as a voting rights bill, they go out of their way to make the FEC partisan. Nothing to do with ballot access, everything to do with raw power. This legislation would convert the FEC into an odd-numbered body where President Biden would pick the tie-breaking vote, the exact outcome that was originally feared. The regulator of our democracy becoming controlled by one side would be hardwired into the rules entirely by design. This is so plainly unfair, so plainly an attempt to stack the deck, that I'm not really sure what more needs to be said. Anyone who wants to talk about reforming the FEC should start with making the existing term limits for the FEC commissioners meaningful. Right now, 2 Democratic-appointed commissioners have stayed long past their length of terms. One has been, quote, held over, end quote, since her term expired 11 years ago. This amendment would eliminate the bizarre and inexcusable attempt to make the FEC a partisan body and instead actually cap the FEC commissioners' tenures at 12 years. So I would encourage my colleagues' support of my amendment.
I'll respond, and then I think there may be others. Right now, we have a dysfunctional Federal Election Commission. Everyone knows that. And this would, if we did nothing, leave in place a dysfunctional and deadlocked FEC. Hundreds of enforcement cases have languished in the past few years. It's not fair to candidates or to the public or anyone who depends on the fair administration of law. The FEC has not enacted any major disclosure rules after Citizens United. It can't even agree to hire a permanent general counsel. There have been no permanent general counsel for more than 7 years. What the Form of the People Act does is to set up a 5-member commission instead of a 6-member commission. It clearly states that no more than 2 of the 5 commissioners can be from the same political party, so no one party can take over the commission. It also sets up a blue ribbon panel to help name nominees to the commission. It will make the nomination process more fair and transparent. The status quo actually only benefits those who are messing around with the system. On either side, if you want to say that. I tend to say it's more on one side, but that's what it does. There's no referee on the field, and I think we are much better off, just like so many commissions that do have, I would say, respect. The FCC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission. These commissions are not even-numbered commissions, and they have done a lot of good work. Senator Cruz.
Madam Chairwoman, this is a vote that is a revealing vote. It's a sorting vote. Because anyone who votes against this amendment is admitting to the game. This bill, the Corrupt Politicians Act, turns the Federal Election Commission from what it has been for 50 years, a bipartisan commission designed to favor neither party, into a partisan agency that would predictably be used to persecute, target, and attack whichever party is out of power. Any senator on this committee who votes against this amendment cannot pretend this bill is about voting rights, cannot pretend this bill is about expanding access to the ballot, because it makes clear that the only objective of this bill is to ensure Democrats stay in power and to target the political opposition. I asked in my opening comments how many Democrats would be comfortable if we had a Republican administration with a Federal Election Commission controlled by Senator McConnell. And it's interesting, on Twitter, the lefty world of Twitter had great joy with my suggesting that a Federal Election Commission controlled by Senator McConnell would be used to target Democrats. I actually happily retweeted that. Because the purpose of this, just as you would not trust a Federal Election Commission controlled by Senator McConnell, I promise you, nobody else would trust a Federal Election Commission controlled by Senator Schumer. And having an FEC that is simply a partisan weapon to attack your opponents makes clear the objective of this is to disenfranchise the voters, is to use the federal government as a tool to make sure if the people of California ever decide we don't want to vote for Democrats anymore, they're not going to be able to, because the Federal Election Commission is used as a partisan weapon to target the political opposition. If our political history has taught us anything, is it's that winds can change. The voters can decide. There was a time when California was the heart of the Republican Party and it voted Republican in 6 consecutive presidential elections. That's no longer the case. Well, if the Corrupt Politicians Act passes, the voters lack the ability to change their mind because it gives the Democratic majority the power to weaponize and target their opposition. I strongly support this amendment.
Any other people want to speak on it? Senator Merkley's eating his sandwich. I'll give him a second.
I have a question. As I read the manager's amendment, it indicates that the commission shall have 5 members, no more than 2 of which may be affiliated with the same political party. Isn't that a check on what you're concerned about? It sounds like you could only have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, that the 3rd member has to be someone, and it is pretty specific. They can't have been affiliated with a party as a registered voter, employee, consultant, donor for the prior 5 years. It seems to me that's not an unreasonable way to deal with what is now a dysfunctional structure that is totally deadlocked. So it doesn't look like this is necessarily a grab by one party or the other, since out of 5 you can only have 2
Senator would yield.
party. So, yes, please.
He's just asking a question.
Senator would yield.
Yes, please.
The FEC is not dysfunctional at all. It requires a bipartisan vote in order to proceed. So you're assuming that because frequently the FEC differs, that somehow it's dysfunctional. That presumes that you want an activist FEC frequently interfering in election contests. The American people don't need any advice about this. Candidates don't need any advice about this. The law is clear. When there's a clear violation, you can reach across the party lines and get somewhere. I mean, the whole notion that failure to act is dysfunctional when we're talking about fundamental First Amendment free speech rights. I don't think there's any dysfunction at all.
For example, Didn't I hear that they haven't been able to appoint a general counsel for?
Yes.
That strikes me as not a very functional organization. If they can't even appoint their own officials, can't
Well,
agree on the appointment.
apparently they can't agree on it, and that is a decision.
Okay, I guess we have a different.
Yeah, I mean, if a failure to reach across the aisle and reach a bipartisan agreement is a decision, not to go forward.
But how do you characterize this as a partisan power grab when no more than 2 out of the 5 can be from the same party?
Oh, I think any president with an ounce of sense can figure out somebody who may appear to be independent who's actually on their side.
And Senator King, if I may address that question as well, I think Senator McConnell is absolutely right. It is not complicated for a partisan president to find 3 votes who are going to vote with him. You know, I would note in the U.S. Senate, there are 2 senators, yourself and Senator Sanders, who are declared independents, but who vote with the Democratic Party with such absolute predictability as to be entirely reliable. I hope at this hearing that's proven wrong, but...
Would the senator from Texas yield for further observation? It'd be interesting for everybody to note that Harry Reid's personal attorney, who's registered independent, has been on the FEC for 15 years.
And I would point out that to take Senator Sanders, for example, I think it would be difficult for anyone to argue with a straight to argue with a straight face that a federal election commission that consisted of 2 explicit Democrats and Senator Sanders would not be a partisan weapon. And look, all of us know how to do this. We have an example, not only the Federal Election Commission itself, but we have an example in the Senate. We have an ethics committee. The ethics committee is the one committee in this body that is designed not to be a partisan committee. And under our rules, it takes a bipartisan majority. Just like the Federal Elections Commission, the Senate Ethics Committee has 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats. That means when the Republicans are in power, and most of us were here when the Republicans were in power for a long time, I suspect Democrats wouldn't have been happy if it was a 3-2 Republican majority that could be used to launch an investigation of a Democratic senator, say, a month before the election. In a purple state like Georgia, I suspect that would make you understandably quite unhappy if the Republican Party had the power to launch a public investigation designed to influence an election. And that's why we require a bipartisan majority on the Ethics Commission. It's also why the law has required for 50 years a bipartisan majority on the Federal Election Commission, and this bill guts that.
I would like to respond as well. First of all, there are so many areas of public policy that the FEC has not acted in. We have all kinds of issues with online political ads and the like, where I don't think they've taken this to the level they need to in terms of making sure that the rules are followed. Not having enforced cases, hundreds of enforcement cases languishing. And I'd point out this isn't just a change for today. This would be a change going forward. So presumably if there is a Republican president, they would be appointing when terms end their own person. So this isn't some power grab by the Democratic Party. What this is trying to give the Federal Election Commission the power it was supposed to have to make decisions, because right now they're pure gridlock. Not even being able to hire a counsel in 7 years, that's gridlock.
Madam President, if I may, 3-3 is a decision. It is a decision. It's a decision that the particular activity that someone thinks is a good idea does not enjoy bipartisan support. That is exactly what Senator Cruz is pointing out here. It's exactly why, as he pointed out, the Ethics Committee is crafted the way it is, exactly why the Federal Election Commission is crafted the way it is.
Senator Merkley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I think there are a few around the country who would share the interpretation that the FCC is actually an effective watchdog for our election laws, because they have basically been unable to do anything for over a decade. Since 2010, The FEC's stalemate has allowed more than $1 billion in dark money from undisclosed sources to flood into elections. Enforcement of rules that limit cooperation between candidates and super PACs has basically gone unpoliced, making the wall between the two essentially non-existent. Presidential candidates have too often become the equivalent of racehorses backed by rival billionaires. It's created no meaningful response by the FEC to the revelations that Russia sought to manipulate the U.S. electorate. Discussion of a change that would allow disclaimers or require disclaimers on the online ads that Russian operatives use to influence American voters has been stalled without action, and so on and so forth and so forth. I don't know that there's an easy answer to this. We would like to have the commissioners who are nominated and confirmed serve the public, not serve the parties. I think what we have in the underlying bill is the closest we can come to that, so that they can actually make decisions for enforcement and do so with no more than 2 members from either party. I take the point that no system is perfect, but the current system means that our election laws just aren't being enforced. And our minority leader in 1973 wrote an op-ed, "Without effective enforcement, a campaign finance law, no matter how noble, could become a farce." Well, our campaign laws have often become a farce. This is an attempt to do better, not perfect. If there's a better way to do it, great, but the existing system is failing Americans by failing to enforce the campaign laws.
Anyone else? Senator Haggerty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to support Senator McConnell's amendment. And I would just cite an example. We talk about the possibility of a Republican president coming in and shifting the partisan weight in the opposite direction. But I'll remind everybody that this whole discussion on S1 is about never having a Republican president serve ever again. All you have to do is look south of our border to Venezuela. Maduro has done exactly this. He has weaponized his equivalent of the FEC, turned it into a partisan body for a very simple reason. He wants to make certain that he remains in power forever, and that's exactly what's taking place here today. That's why we need to support Senator McConnell's amendment. Thank you.
I would note at our hearing, Trevor Potter, the former Republican chair of the Federal Election Commission, strongly supports this entire bill because of the outside influence of money and the failure of the FEC to be able to make enforcement decisions. And so that's why I oppose this amendment. But you should look at his testimony. He is well known by many of you, and I don't think he'd be messing around if he thought that this bill favored one party or the other. With that, let's have a vote.
Senator Feinstein.
No by proxy.
Senator Schumer.
No by proxy.
Senator Warner.
No by proxy.
Senator Leahy.
No by proxy.
Senator King. Senator Merkley. No. Senator Padilla. No. Senator Ossoff.
No.
Senator Blunt.
Votes aye.
Senator McConnell.
Aye.
Senator Shelby. Aye. Senator Cruz. Aye. Senator Capito.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Wicker.
Aye.
Senator Fisher. Aye. Senator Hyde-Smith. Aye. Senator Haggerty.
Aye.
Chairwoman Klobuchar.
No.
9 ayes, 9 noes.
Tied vote, the amendment fails. Is there another amendment?